Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep stories like these alive. Stories most would rather forget. This is the true and terrifying descent of Jeffrey Dahmer. Not only how he became a serial killer, but why no one saw the darkness growing until it was far too late. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born May 21st, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His childhood, at first glance, seemed ordinary. But behind the walls of the Dahmer home, cracks were already forming. His father, Lionel, was a research chemist. Brilliant, but distant. His mother, Joyce, struggled with depression, anxiety, and later addiction to prescription drugs. Their marriage was turbulent, filled with arguments that shattered the fragile quiet of their home. And little Jeffrey absorbed it all. From an early age, Jeffrey was drawn to death. Roadkill fascinated him. He collected animal bones. He told classmates he liked the sound they made when he rubbed them together. By age 10, he was already fantasizing, though no one knew it. He wanted control over animals, over people, over death itself. But here is the first failure, the first sign ignored. Teachers noticed he was withdrawn. Neighbors whispered about his strange behavior. His parents were too lost in their own battles to see. The system looked away, and Dahmer slipped into darkness. By his teenage years, Dahmer's drinking had already begun. He carried beer in his school locker, whiskey in his army jacket. His classmates nicknamed him the Cannibal, long before anyone knew the truth. He was quiet, but not invisible. He staged pranks, mocking seizures and imitating people with disabilities for laughs, a mask to hide the emptiness beneath. Inside, his fantasies deepened. Fantasies of men. Fantasies of domination. Fantasies of corpses. June 18th, 1978. Dahmer had just graduated high school. He was home alone, his parents gone, his house empty. And then he saw him. Stephen Hicks, 18 years old, hitchhiking to a rock concert. Dahmer offered him a ride, a beer, a few hours of company. But when Stephen tried to leave, Dahmer panicked. The thought of abandonment ignited something primal inside him. He grabbed a dumbbell, struck Hicks on the head, strangled him. Then, he stripped the flesh from his bones. It was the beginning of a pattern that would last over a decade. For nearly 9 years, Dahmer committed no known murders. But silence does not mean peace. During those years, he joined the army, only to be discharged for alcoholism. He moved in with his grandmother in West Dallas, and the urges grew stronger. At first, he dug up graves, fantasizing about corpses. But the reality was too messy, too decayed. So, Dahmer turned back to the living. November 20th, 1987. Stephen Toomey. Dahmer picked him up from a Milwaukee bar, rented a hotel room. By morning, Toomey was dead. Dahmer claimed he didn't remember killing him, but his body told the truth. Dahmer purchased a suitcase, packed the corpse inside, carried it back to his grandmother's basement, and dissolved it in acid. From 1988 to 1991, Dahmer spiraled. He lured men from bars and bathhouses. He drugged them with sleeping pills. He strangled them, dismembered them, and then he consumed them. Neighbors complained of smells. They heard the buzzing of saws, the pounding of hammers. Police visited more than once, but Dahmer smiled. He was polite, a quiet neighbor, a white man in a working-class building. Conorak sent the phone. 14 years old, drugged, disoriented, barely clothed. Neighbors called 911. Police arrived, but Dahmer told them it was a lover's quarrel, that the boy was his partner, and the officers gave him back. They escorted a child into the arms of his killer. Hours later, Conorak was dead, his skull preserved in Dahmer's freezer. This was not just a failure. It was complicity. Tracy Edwards was supposed to be Dahmer's next victim. But when the knife came out, Edwards fought. He escaped, flagged down police, led them back to Dahmer's apartment. And inside, the horror was finally exposed. They found human heads in the fridge, torsos in barrels of acid, drawers of bones, photographs cataloging every stage of dismemberment. 17 victims, each murdered, violated, consumed. In 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer stood trial in Milwaukee, charged with 15 murders. The defense argued insanity, that his urges controlled him, that he was not responsible. But the jury disagreed. They saw not madness but calculation. Dahmer was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms. Nearly 1,000 years in prison. In prison, Dahmer found God. He was baptized. He carried a Bible. But redemption never came. On November 28, 1994, another inmate, Christopher Scarver, beat Dahmer to death with a steel bar. His skull crushed. His life ended in violence. the same way he had lived. This is the story most people know. But there is another story, one less told. It is the story of how society failed. The police who returned Konarak to his killer. The judges who gave Dahmer second chances after earlier arrests. The neighbors whose cries were dismissed because the system didn't care about poor, gay, or immigrant men. 17 candles flickering in darkness, representing the victims. 17 lives lost, not only because Jeffrey Dahmer was a monster, but because the world let him be one. And perhaps the most chilling truth is this: Jeffrey Dahmer was not born a serial killer. He was made, piece by piece, wound by wound, failure by failure. Jeffrey Dahmer's story is not just one of horror. It is a warning. Evil does not appear overnight. It grows slowly, in the cracks of neglect, addiction, abuse, and apathy. And if no one dares to look, it grows teeth. If you found this story compelling, like, share, and subscribe, because the truth is always darker than fiction.